it's Kelly, and today I want to share with you some of my recent reads. And normally when I do my recent reads videos, I only talk about 3 or 4 books so that I can talk more in depth without being a really long video. But today I have 5 books to share with you. And the reason is this last month has just been crazy. My whole family has been sick in one way or the other, so I just haven't been able to film, so these books have been piling up. I had like a week where we all had pink eye, and I knew you didn't want to see that on camera, and then I had a week where I had a cold that got to the point where I lost my voice for a week and can only speak in a whisper. So yeah, no filming, so these books have piled up, and I was like, I gotta do this now before we leave on vacation again, and then I won't be able to film for another week. So you get 5 books, so I'll try to be succinct so that this doesn't go on forever. And there's a wide variety of ratings and genres here. I've read a quite interesting variety. The first couple are books that I read as part of Lalathon, and Lalathon was a readathon at the beginning of November that was based all around the channel BooksandLala and her favorite books. And these were both books I had been meaning to read, and I just thought since the readathon was there, I would just pick them up this time. And I am very glad that I picked up More Than This by Ness, because I just loved this book. I really enjoyed the reading experience the whole time. But this is one of those books that's really hard to review and talk about, because part of the enjoyment of this was seeing it unravel the story, and so you don't want to give away a lot of the plot. And so I'm just going to tell you basically what it says on the back, which is that our main character Seth, very beginning, our first chapter, we see Seth drowning and he dies. And then the next page, he wakes up in the middle of a yard and doesn't know where he is or what's going on, if he really did die, if it was a dream, if he's in hell, if he's in purgatory, if something weird is happening, you know. So he doesn't have any idea what happens. He just remembers dying, and then he wakes up. So that's all for the plot I want to give away, because it really does unfold as Seth starts to learn what is happening. We start to learn what is happening in this world, and so I don't want to take that enjoyment away from you, because that's what I really loved. I love not having any clue what was happening, not knowing what in the world is going to happen next, because a lot of stuff happens here that you're like, whoa, it kind of blew my mind. And what I love about this story is it's equal parts kind of like that fast-paced, gripping plot of a dystopian kind of novel, but then at the same time, there's lots of moments of pondering and thinking about life and the meaning of life and what it means to be alive and be a person and all that. And so I really enjoyed that juxtaposition, that it was both intense and had action and kept it going through the whole story and new surprises, but at the same time we had those moments to really think philosophically. And a lot of people I've read on reviews don't like the ending of this book, but I really loved it. I just loved the whole thing. I gave it 5 stars. I would highly recommend it, and I know it's hard when you have no idea what a book is about going into it, but I would say if you are interested at all, go and pick it up from your library or an ebook and just read the first couple chapters, and if that intrigues you, then keep going, because I just thought Ness has a way of telling a story, and I just want to read everything by him now. I'd read A Monster Calls earlier in the year and loved it, and gave that 5 stars. I gave this 5 stars, so I'm excited to read something else by him, because I just think he has a way of creating a story and getting you gripped right away. And then the next one I read was part of Lalathon as well, and that was The Cabin at the End of the World by Tremblay. And this is a horror thriller, and it is about a family. It is 2 dads and I think she's about 8-year-old child, and they are on vacation in a secluded cabin in the woods, and then from there it becomes kind of like a home invasion story. So there are people that come and kind of take them hostage, and I won't tell any more details because that's a thriller, and it's a pretty short thriller. You don't really want to know anything else from there. This one, I didn't actually give this a rating. I don't think I'm going to give it a rating. I'll think about it, but the problem is that this book I felt was technically a really well written story, and a really well done story. Like, I think his writing was amazing. I think the way he put the story together was really good and compelling. But this was not the book for me. And I should have known that, because I even got like a warning ahead of time about graphic violence. And there were times I had to like skim because it was just too much for me. I just can't really take that real graphic violence. It kind of had that Criminal Minds kind of, you know, like the TV show Criminal Minds kind of vibe, where it was like a little like, but even more graphic, because I can imagine it myself, and my imagination always is more graphic than what is on TV. And so that's why I tend to avoid those kind of like horror books. But everybody been kind of talking about this book lately, and Lala was raving about it, and I really liked the idea of it having a, you know, the main characters being a gay couple and everything, because you don't see that a lot in thrillers, and I just really wanted to check it out, but it probably was not meant for me. So I would say, if you are somebody that can handle gore and like graphic violence, there's not a lot of it, but there was enough that it made me uncomfortable and made me kind of regret reading it, because now I'll have it like in my mind. But if you are somebody that can handle that kind of thing, like if you read Stephen King or read kind of things that are a little more graphic violence, like Karen Slaughter or something like that, I think you would like this, because I thought it was a really great story. I just was not the audience for this. That's why I don't want to rate it, because I think technically it could be a 5 stars, but my enjoyment was probably a lot lower, because it wasn't for, I'm not the right audience for this book. So I would recommend it to somebody that can handle that. If you are somebody that does not do well with graphic violence, I'd probably say stay away from it, because it was just a little too much for me, and it was pretty intense. But what the things I did love about this story was Paul Tremblay really is able to create a sense of suspense throughout it without actually a lot of violent moments. Like, the violent moments were intense, but they were like not a lot. It wasn't like where it's every 10 pages something violent is happening. Like, it was kind of few and far between, but the anticipation leading up to those violent moments was like really intense, that kept me like, oh my gosh, like anticipating the whole time something's gonna happen. And then when it did happen, I was like, skim. But he did create the intensity really well. And I also love the way he created this dynamic in this family. It was a beautiful view on a family and people that love each other in a really like high crisis situation. And I just loved their relationship, the dads with the daughter, the way they talked to each other, the way they dealt with the situation, but still showed each other that they loved each other, even though they were in such a, you know, drain on your system to be in that hostage situation. So I just love them as a family. And actually, there's 2 books in this whole pile I have here that have adoption stories, and this is one of them. Their daughter is adopted, and I am an adoptive mom, and so I just love to see families that are projected as good parents that are adoptive parents, because we sometimes get stories of, like, especially fairy tale stories, you get these like where the adoptive families are sometimes like the evil stepmother kind of thing, where the family is so loving and amazing, and I loved their bond throughout the story, and so that compelled me to continue to read it. So I almost DNF'd it at the first like moment of graphic violence, but I kept going because of the family. And so ultimately, like, I was happy that I continued reading it, but I probably shouldn't have picked up the book in the beginning. So I know that's a long explanation to just say, if you're okay with graphic violence, definitely pick this up. If you aren't, you probably should pass. And then the next book I read was something light and fluffy that could like make me feel better after some intense books. And so I read Fairest by Gail, Carson, Levine, and this is a middle grade fantasy, a fairy tale retelling. And I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was a really good middle grade story, like really fun. I enjoyed it. I read it really quickly because the story captured me, the characters captured me. I love the world. And this is about a girl named Asa who, she is our main character, and from the very beginning she is described as being ugly. And she describes herself as that way, and she has a lot of interactions with other people that treat her badly because of her looks and things like that. And so we don't have that like stereotypical beautiful main character. So she's a little different than our normal like fairy tale main character. And then she ends up, she's a commoner in her kingdom and is the daughter of an innkeeper. And one day a woman, through different circumstances at her inn, invites her to come to court with her into the kingdom, you know, where the castle is and everything like that. So she ends up interacting with some more high society and things like that. And I don't want to give away, you know, a lot of it, but this is a Snow White retelling, so that can kind of tell you some of the things that are going to happen. But it is a little twist on it, because if it doesn't focus on her being the beauty, but beauty is a big theme in this, and Aza's desire to be beautiful, and how she feels like if she was beautiful, people would treat her different, and that is a big theme. Another theme that I really enjoyed from this book was about the difference between someone being a ruler and being a tyrant, and that there is a difference between that. You can have a kingdom with a monarchy that is leading their people, but being compassionate, benevolent ruler, and you can have somebody that is making selfish decisions and ruling a kingdom with more of a tyrannical rulership. And so I liked that theme in the book. There is a romance in here, and that's actually the part that brought it down a star for me. I really enjoyed Aza, I really enjoyed the world, I liked all the other themes, but I felt the romance wasn't developed enough. Like, I liked them as a couple, but not really until much later. Like, I felt that she didn't build up the relationship enough at the beginning, that by the time there was like a climactic event, I didn't feel like there was enough depth to their relationship to make it go where it did after that climactic event. And so it kind of was a little like, really? Like, what it felt like to me was Aza fell in love with this person just because they were nice to her, and that so many people have been mean to her because she has always thought she was ugly, that it was like the first person that was nice to her, she fell in love with them. And that is not a reason to fall in love with somebody, just like you wouldn't want a character that falls in love with another character just because they're beautiful. That's just like so surface level. Like, just because a person's nice. I've been around a lot of nice people in my life. I have not fallen in love with all of them. So I didn't like that felt like why she fell in love with him. And so I did feel like their relationship later on got some depth, but it didn't get enough depth soon enough to make sense during the climax, if that makes sense. So I feel like she should have developed more of the relationship towards the beginning to give us more reason to like support them as a couple, because it was such a big theme in the book. I felt like it could have been focused on more. So that's why I was 4 instead of 5, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was a good way of kind of spinning the Snow White story and all that. So I would recommend it, and I do want to check out other things by Gail, Carson, Levine. I really enjoyed the way she built her world, and her writing really reminded me of Shannon Hale, and Shannon Hale is one of my favorite young adult and middle grade writers, so I will pick up more by her. And hopefully, I've heard a lot of people in reviews say that her other books, the romance is more developed, so this might have been one that just wasn't quite there. And then my last 2 books are both by the same authors, or same author, and I have very polar views on them. So I'll start with the one I didn't like, and that was City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. And this is a middle grade novel as well, and it is about a young girl who has a connection to the ghost world, and her parents are ghost hunters, but her parents don't necessarily fully believe in ghosts, but that's what they do for a profit, is they write books and things like that about ghost hunting and ghost stories. And so like this whole book is kind of about them going to Edinburgh, Scotland, and her kind of like dealing with the ghosts in that city. And I thought the premise was really interesting, because one of the main points in the plot is that Cassidy, our main character, her best friend is a ghost. And I thought that was a really interesting and intriguing plot device that we were going to get to know those characters. But the problem with this book was that it was so boring. I had to force myself to continue reading this book. And it is short. I mean, it's only like, what, 200 some pages, and the like writing is really huge. Like, I should have been able to fly through this book so quickly. But I was reading it for a buddy read, and we were supposed to read like 6 chapters a day. And I had to force myself each evening to sit down and read those 6 chapters, even though it shouldn't have taken very long. I had to make myself continue. And if I wasn't doing a buddy read, I probably would have just put it down and not come back because I was just bored. There was nothing compelling me to read this story. I thought that the characters were just really surface level. Like, the fact that she has a ghost best friend, that's intriguing. Like, I wanted to, like, hear a lot more of the backstory and things like that, and we didn't really get that. And also, like, the plot, really nothing happens. A lot, like, the whole first half of the book is just, like, set up. And I was like, something needs to happen. Come on. And then we finally get to the main, like, kind of villain of this specific story. And I was like, oh, good. Something intriguing. And so, like, I got into it for a little bit. And then it seemed like the whole ending and climax of the story was so rushed. I was like, that's it. This is it. This is all the excitement we get. We get, like, 1 chapter, basically, of excitement. And then book is done. So I just felt this was really boring. And I think, to me, this felt like she had written a first draft, and then the publisher was like, all right, let's roll. Let's send it out there. And it didn't get fleshed out. Like, it didn't get returned to and, like, turned from a first draft into a final product with depth of characters and plot and all that. Like, the writing just seemed blah and boring. So I personally would not recommend it. And I know that that is an unpopular opinion because a lot of people rate this highly. And it might be that a lot of people don't read a ton of middle grade, because I saw in a lot of people's reviews people saying that it was simple, but they're like, oh, it's middle grade. It's supposed to be simple. I'm like, no, I read a lot of middle grade. Like I just talked about a middle grade book that was a 4. Like, you can do good middle grade that is compelling and interesting and has depth of characters and a rich world, and this is not it. This is not good middle grade to me. This was a 2.5 stars. It wasn't, like, terrible, and maybe if you were of that tween age, maybe it would be a little more interesting, but as an adult, I found it completely boring and not worth the time, and I will not be continuing the series and wouldn't recommend it. But I read another book by Victoria Schwab. I read Vicious, and this one she used her name VE Schwab, and this one I gave 5 stars to. So I just never know with Victoria Schwab, because I also read Darker Shade of Magic, and I gave that like a middle review. I thought it was all right, but not as fantastic as a lot of people say. So I just don't know. I'm going to keep trying her, but like City of Ghosts, no. This one, amazing. So I will continue this into the duology because this has a sequel. But this one was intriguing and compelling and had depth of characters. So I know she's capable of it. And that's what really disappointed me about City of Ghosts. And this one is about 2 main characters, Eli and Victor. And they were best friends when they were in college. And they did an experiment that kind of was about extraordinary humans. Things fell out. And this book also takes place as a dual timeline between that time when they were in college and current time, which I think is 15 years in the future, and they are now enemies. And what I loved about this was the characters. I thought that she did an amazing job of making 2 characters that were both horrible people, but were so compelling to read about that I found myself sympathizing with these characters that were absolutely horrible. And that takes good writing to make you compelled to like somebody that is not a good person and is a villain. So both of these characters are villains, but it's such a compelling way that their story interacts with each other and the different characters. So I loved it, and it was like gripping from moment to moment. I don't even usually like when there's 2 timelines and we're jumping back and forth all the time and we're jumping back between perspectives. Like, we kind of jump between at least 3 perspectives, because we go between the 2 guys, and there's a young girl in this who I think she's like 12, and we get a lot of her perspective too. And even with the jumping back and forth perspectives, I was gripped the whole time. I was like, I couldn't put it down. I just for a buddy read with Merphy Napier. Oh, which by the way, I forgot. This buddy read was with Elizabeth from Literary Lizzy. I will put her channel down below. And this one was with Merphy Napier and her Patreon group. I will also link her down below. She's another booktuber. And we were only supposed to read 5 chapters a day, and there were times I was like, I can't stop at 5 chapters. And so I would try my hardest to put it down so that I didn't spoil anybody in the group. And so I could have probably read this in like 2 days if I wasn't buddy reading, and could have just gone through it. And when I read the sequel, I probably will just like devour it, because this was amazing. So I just don't even know with Victoria Schwab. I mean, like, tell me, guys, if you have read this Savage Song, because I haven't read that duology, and I haven't read, she has another one called like Archived or something like that. Tell me if they're any good, and if you like them, and I will give them a chance, because I just don't know with her, because sometimes I really just find her boring, and then other times I found it so good. So she confuses me as an author. But this one, I recommend. Excellent. So that is it. Sorry if that took a long time to get through those 5 books. That's everything I've been reading. And I will be on vacation for the next week for Thanksgiving, so you probably won't see me again for a little while. But by then, maybe I'll have a few more books read. All right, I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving if you are in America. And if not, just enjoy your next week of November. All right, bye.